The seven seals of Revelation. The fourth seal, Revelation chapter 6, verse 7 to 8. 4 different horses come out in Revelation 6, which are the first 4 seals of Revelation. And although I will be interpreting the fourth seal first, I want to read over the passage about 4 seals because they are short and so that I may comment on a few things before moving on. Verse 1. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice from the 4th beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the earth. So the scripture for the 4 seals end here. There come out 4 horses of white, red, black, and pale color. And some say that the rider on the white horse is Jesus, because it is white color and goes out to conquer. However, it must not be so, and cannot be so. As we all know, even the Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, as clearly written in 2 Corinthians 11:14. And how can one conquer without arrow? If you had a rifle but had no bullet, how could you conquer with it? Wouldn't you pretend as if you had bullets loaded? That is how Satan works. The devil and his minions pretend as if they have authority over your body and mind. And they would utilize very well organized system, infrastructure, plans, strategy, plots, skill sets, knowledge, and teamwork in order to conquer. But isn't it why Jesus said in Matthew 10:28, And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Moreover, other 3 horses caused heinous events. Therefore, we can deduce that the white horse is also likely evil in nature. So John saw in his vision a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And for many reasons we discussed, the rider on the white horse must be a false prophet, not Jesus Christ. Back to the 4th seal in verse 8, And power was given unto death and hell over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, hunger, death, and beast of the earth. The 4th part of the earth is a very large area affecting a huge number of people. If we could examine which event in history affected such portion of population at once, and from my history class, the first thing came to my mind was the Black Death. Here is Black Death at a glance. Black Death peaked in Europe from 1348 to 1350. The Black Death was most likely carried by oriental rat fleas living on black rats. The black rats reached throughout the Mediterranean and Europe via merchant ships. The Black Death is estimated to have killed 30 to 60% of Europe's total population. All in all, the plague reduced the world population from an estimated 450 million down to 350 to 375 million in the 14th century. And the aftermath created a series of religious, social, economic upheavals, and it took 150 years for Europe's population to recover. Overall, the 14th century Europe was a tragedy due to the malnutrition, poverty, disease, hunger, war, and inflation. This map illustrates the spread of the Black Death. In year 1347, you see it started from the Mediterranean regions in dark orange. By 1349, it already invaded half of Europe's inland in orange color, and by 1350s, it already spread throughout the Scandinavia and over to Russia in white color. Judging by the impacted area and the degree of population reduction, the Black Death seems to fit some description of the fourth seal. But is there a way to confirm for sure? So the investigation continued. And something is strange. The scripture says in the fourth seal to kill with death. But how do you kill with death? I mean, it seems out of line to have listed death along with the sword, hunger, and the beast, to say the least. So I looked up the Greek word for death, and it was indeed thanatos, which proper translation is death. But what's interesting was other commentators agreed that something did not seem right. They also sensed what I thought was strange and already have delved into this matter. And this is what I found. According to the Vincent's Word Study commentary, the Hebrew word deber, pestilence, is rendered by Greek word for death in Septuagint. What this means is that there is something called Septuagint, which is a Greek version of the Old Testament that is translated from original Hebrew. And when the Hebrew word deber, meaning pestilence, is translated into Greek, it was rendered as thanatos in Septuagint. Adam Clark's commentary on the Bible also states that death here refers to pestilence. So we can see how many commentators also came to understand thanatos to mean pestilence. Because pestilence can cause death, but you could not kill with death. And after all, the historic event of bubonic plague is called Black Death, and the Black Death was caused by pestilence carried from black rats. It fits amazingly with the etymological perspective too. So we can conclude that the death in Revelation 6:8 is indeed the Black Death. Albert Barnes' notes on the Bible also testify to this matter of equating death with the pestilence, where he goes on to say that the pestilence is referred to here is rendered more certain by the fact that the Hebrew word deber, pestilence, which occurs about 50 times in the Old Testament, is rendered thanatos, death, more than 30 times in the Septuagint. And in the fourth seal, we find the pale horse killing with the sword, hunger, pestilence, and the beast of the earth. The Greek word for the beast is therion, which is defined as diminutive form of ther, hence the little beast, little animal. We have similar suffix in English too, where kitten describes a small kitty cat, right? So in Greek, therion means diminutive ther, meaning little beast or animals. And in Revelation 13, when it describes the emergence of the Antichrist, it also uses the same word therion to denote the beast. Anyways, how small or little is the little beast then? We may ask. And the archaeological findings of the old scripts, we have cases where they describe honeybees as therion. And as a matter of fact, the Black Death was a pestilence that was spread by rats and fleas, which can legitimately be referred to the word therion. And in the King James Version, it is translated to kill with the beasts. But in the original Greek text, it writes, hupo ton therion. Why is this significant? Because the preposition hupo means by, which signifies the beasts were the specific carrier of the plague and pestilent pathogen. So every single word written in this verse confirms that the Black Death is the correct interpretation. Of course, there might have been dogs, pigs, vultures, and other wild animals that ate off the dead corpse and cleaned up after the mess, but the scripture here seems to specifically suggest the otherwise, that it was by the black rats and the fleas that the population was infested. The academia also attempted to tally the number of people that died in this bubonic plague. The professor by the name of Justus Friedrich Karl Hecker, who is generally acknowledged to be the most learned medical historian and one of the most able medical writers in Germany, added up the death toll from each city and testified, of all the estimates of the numbers of lives lost in Europe, the fourth part of the inhabitants were carried off. You can see some names of the cities that he covered in his search, like Florence, Venice, Paris, and so on. And this was Professor Hecker's logic. If Europe at present, in year 1859, contained 210 million inhabitants, the population, not to take higher estimate, which might easily be justified, amounted to at least 105 million in the 16th century, which is 3 centuries before then. It may therefore be assumed, without exaggeration, that Europe lost during the Black Death 25 million of inhabitants. Remember that historians say that it took Europe 150 years to recover its population from the Black Death. So, Professor Hecker reasons that if the population in the 16th century was 105 million, which is a recovered population, then the number 25 million victims would have reflected a fourth part of the population at the time of the Black Death, which was in the 14th century. Do you follow? So there we have a glimpse of historical, scholarly support to substantiate that the fourth seal was fulfilled to the letter, killing the fourth part of the earth. The scripture is dead on, it accurately prophesied the event. Some might argue that the fourth of Europe's population cannot represent the fourth of the earth's population, but the word for the earth is ge in Greek, which can mean the earth as the planet, or the land, or the territory that the event affects. In any case, many commentators of the past have accurately interpreted the significance of the word death and the beasts of the earth, but it is now our job to correctly match the words of prophecy with the historical event. In the fourth seal, it also mentions hunger to kill people, and we could ask the same question: what did the scripture mean by hunger? Was it caused by natural disaster, or the political or socio-economic problem? And we can take the same approach to search for the meaning of the word limos, which is defined as the scarcity of harvest, famine. And defining hunger made our search easier. We just simply had to look up the events that caused great starvation in history before the Black Death event in 14th century. Why? Because Revelation 6:8 lists in this order: sword, hunger, death, and the beast of the earth. Therefore, we were confident that the corresponding event of the Great Famine would appear before or prior to the 14th century, respectively. If our presumption is correct, then the event corresponding to the sword would also come before the hunger event. And if you search for great famines, you will find two great famines prior to the Black Death of 1348. Of all great famines in the list, only two occurred before the Black Death. One was the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 in Northern Europe, which probably is the corresponding event matching the prophecy. And the other one was the Great India Famine of 1344 to 1345, but not much information could be found on it to really verify or locate its place in the Bible prophecy. As you will find out more, the seals of Revelation occur with rather long intervals and usually represent a first significant event in history that serves precedence for the future references. And if you read into the Great European Famine, it is quite terrible. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, occasionally dated 1315 to 1322, was the first of the series of large-scale crises that struck Northern Europe early in the 14th century. From the Pyrenees to Russia and from Scotland to Italy, it caused millions of deaths over the extended number of years, and marks a clear end to the earlier period of growth and prosperity during the 11th to 13th century. Europe did not fully recover until 1322. It was a period marked by extreme levels of crime, disease, mass death, and even cannibalism and infanticide. Just terrible, but dead on accurate from the Bible prophecy perspective. We do know from Genesis what a 7-year-long famine would do to people's lifestyle, and we can only imagine how horrible it was in Europe for these 7 years. It is also noted in Lorraine, France, the wheat prices increased by 320%, and it is estimated that 10 to 25% of the population of many cities and towns died from this great famine. And in Revelation 6:8, we also have the sword mentioned. If the Black Death occurred from 1348 to 1350, while the Great European Famine occurred from 1315, then the event corresponding to the sword would come prior to these years. So it was no longer a matter of questioning, but a simple research. Thanks to living in an information age, researching is ever easy. And in the list titled, Possibly the 20 Worst Things People Have Done to Each Other, you can see the selected death tolls for wars, massacres, and atrocities before the 20th century. On the very top, we have World War II, death toll of 66 million. Next, we have the Mao Zedong, listed with 40 million death toll. Ranked together as number 2 is Genghis Khan with same 40 million death toll, happening in the 13th century. Death toll of 40 million during 13th century must have left far more devastating effects than any other time in recent history. The expansion of Mongol Empire was the invasion with horses and swords. And while the list goes on, I must point out that the World War III will eventually top all events listed here with minimal death toll of 66.6 million during the Sixth Trumpet. By its astounding number of participating soldiers and of death toll, the event in Euphrates will clearly draw the world's attention. Genghis Khan was the founder and the emperor of Mongol Empire, which became the largest contiguous empire in history after his death in 1227. He first became the Great Khan in 1206. Here is the map of expanding Mongol Empire from the 1206 to 1294, conquering most of the Eurasia. So in my opinion, Genghis Khan and the Mongol invasion have to be included in the Bible prophecy, and they occupied entire 13th century. Although Genghis Khan died in 1227, the Mongol Empire continued until it fractured into 4 empires in 1294. At the dawn of the 14th century, there was Great European Famine starting in 1315 that once again devastated the population, and soon followed the spread of the bubonic plague in 1348, caused by the black rats and fleas, which coined the term Black Death. There are studies that speculate the initial spread of Black Death was associated with Mongol invasion, and the Great Famine was also prominent in China during the 14th century, before the pestilence ravaged their population as well. In any case, it is my humble opinion that these series of events are duly interpreted as the fourth seal of Revelation, and I must say, these series of events fit perfectly with the Revelation timeline.